Okay, hello guys and girls, and we're going to continue our classes this time with the 2D drawing, and we're going to look at the 8, 9, uh, uh, 5, 6, 7, 8 um, principles of animation. So we're going to look at the next four, and then we're going to understand more about the follow through and overlapping action. So the first one is follow through and overlapping action, and there's also a sense of understanding what drag is. And the second one is after that we will look at the slow in and slow out, how the uh, the fading in and the fading out of certain animation with respect to how many frames you will have on fading out and slowing in. And the other principle is the arcs. And these are very simple things that you can use. These are understandable. I'm sure some many of you actually studied this already, but you're going to implement this in your exercise. So that's what you're going to plan to do, whatever it is that you're using. You can even use simple animakers. There is an application that you can use called Animaker. It's a simplified using templates, but as long as you can use these principles in your design, you can use Flip a Clip or whatever practical softwares that you can use. And finally, we're going to look at secondary action. Okay, so these are the things that are very important, guys. So let's take a look. Let me share my screen so that we can look at specific um, one. Okay, now we're going to look at this one. All right, so I believe it's going to start around follow through. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's make sure that we have audio. Let's confirm that in a second. Hold on. All right, let's just make sure that we do it right. Let's do share screen. Uh, okay, I'm going to share with the sound. And then we're going to look at this particular one. No, not that one. Stop. Where is it? Stop share. All right. Okay, let's try it one more time. Let's do a share screen. Let's do a share sound. And let's take a look at where that file is. Okay. So look at that. Where is it? Do it one more time. Share screen. There it is. With a sound. Okay, guys. So here it is. We're going to look at 12 principles of animation. 5, 6, 7, 8. Here we go.
Principle of animation is called follow-through and overlapping action. This is the technique of having body parts and appendages drag behind the rest of the body and continue to move when the body stops. Follow-through and overlapping action are often associated with another technique called drag. These names all describe the same thing but in different ways. For example, follow-through refers to the way parts of the body continue to move after the body is stopped. Overlapping action describes the offset between the timing of the main body and its other parts. Drag describes the technique of delaying the movement of body parts in relation to the main body. All three of these are basically describing different aspects of the same thing. Follow-through and overlapping action add a great deal of realism to a character. Here's a character with and without follow-through and overlapping action. Basically, when the main body moves, the tip of the appendage should be the last to catch up, and when the body stops, the tip should follow through the farthest before settling back. This is true of not just appendages, but the whole body as well. When coming to a stop, often the body will follow through and then come back. Just as a character needs to anticipate his jump, he also needs to follow through his land. Sometimes the extra skin on a character can be treated as a separate entity with drag and follow through. Similar to
Okay, so the drag is when some part of the animation is actually getting behind, and the follow through is like when it bounces off and then back and forth. The sample of the drag they showed here is the skin of the dog that was moving, and also the plant when it was being moved, and the top part, the upper part of the flower was actually dragging. It's getting late, and then when it bounces back, it follows through. Okay, so here's an example of follow through.
To squash and stretch, the amount of drag that you give something says something about its mass. The first one is like a TV antenna, while the second one is like a feather. It's usually easier to add the appendages after the animation of the main body is finished. When adding hair, for example, use the previous frame as an indicator of where the hair should be stretched towards. Since it has drag, it should be dragging from where it was in the last frame. In addition, make sure to let the hair follow through when the body comes to a stop. Arms are a good place to insert follow-through and overlapping action. Have the elbows lead the arm's actions. The elbow comes first, followed by the forearm, and then the hand. This is true even when walking. The forearms drag slightly behind the elbows, and the hands drag slightly behind the forearms. Overlapping action helps to break up an animation to make it more interesting. If we offset the movement of the arms and legs, the animation appears more graceful. If a character is standing up from the ground, we could offset the top half from the bottom half to make it look less easy and more realistic. Alright, so the next principle is called slow in and slow out.
Okay, so we finished the follow through and drag and overlapping action. That's all in one. The next part is slow in and slow out. This is where you have multiple keyframes, and in between keyframes, depending on where there is a slow or fade in or fade out kind of, then you will put in more frames towards away from the slow in and slow out. Okay, so here's the example.
This principle refers to the way pretty much all movement starts slowly, builds speed, and finishes slowly. This is one of the most important principles to achieving lifelike motion. Without slow in and slow out, things feel mechanical. That's because robots are one of the only things that actually move their parts at a constant speed. To use this principle in 2D animation, you take your extreme poses, draw a single in-between, and then draw in between those, then only in between the drawings closest to the extremes until you're satisfied with the amount of slow in and slow out. With 3D animation and motion graphics, adding slow in and slow out is a matter of changing the motion curves from linear to spline by adjusting the Bezier handles. As time progresses, the object starts slow, gets fast, and ends slowly. Use it wisely. For example, you wouldn't add a slow out to a bouncing ball as it's colliding with the ground, but you would add it as it's bouncing back up.
Now notice, contrary to what your mind is thinking, the more picture frames you put in the images or in the whole animation, the slower it will get. Okay, the less frames that you would put on the animation, the in-between spaces, the faster it will get. Okay, so that's, picture that one. Because as you move the frames towards the more pictures, you would find that it's actually slowly moving if you have so many pictures on it. Okay, so remember that one.
You wouldn't add it to a bullet coming out of a gun, but you would add it as the gun comes up due to whiplash. Using this principle can allow you to only have to draw one in between if the motion is quick enough. Draw one in between and then add another frame on either end with the drawing slightly skewed in the correct direction, and then it's done. Sometimes you don't even have to add the one in between. This kind of motion can be achieved in 3D with very extreme curves. Many people starting out with animation get impatient and draw the next frame very far away from the beginning.
Now, let me explain a little bit on
Sometimes you don't even have to add the one in between. This kind of motion can be...
Let me explain about the graph here, okay? The motion here is talking about the top part is the higher it is, and that means the more motion it will have, the higher motion it will have, so the increase in motion. The time it will take, this is the bottom one, that's the bottom scale, that's the x-axis. So the time will be the same. So as you increase the motion in each time, so that will reflect what kind of animation you will have. That's where the slow in and slow out is going to be. And watch.
Achieved in 3D.
You'll notice that he makes the curve a lot higher towards the middle part of the time. What does it mean? It means that a certain part, it will go faster, and then it will go slower, and then it will go back faster again. Okay, because the motion is actually increasing, and it will go to one aspect, and then we'll go to another aspect. Okay.
With very extreme curves. Many people starting out with animation get impatient and draw the next frame very far away from the beginning. It's very unrealistic for a character to go from completely still to super fast.
Okay, it's very unrealistic to go from a still, that means not moving, and all of a sudden it's moving. So you have to put in more keyframes in between, or right before the actual first movement it will have, okay?
So adding a few drawings to ease into it will fix the problem. A good way to fix a choppy animation is to analyze the space between the drawings. They should be evenly spaced, with drawings closer together at the beginning of the action and at the end of the action, and drawings farther apart in the middle. Alright, the seventh principle of animation is...
Okay, so we're now going to the seventh principle. Slow in and slow out just a while ago. Let me just show that part again. Now notice he said that you have to evenly frame it, okay? So make sure that the frames are even. So that's what it is.
Evenly spaced, with drawings closer together at the beginning of the action and at the end of the action, and drawings farther apart in the middle.
Okay, we'll go to the
principle of animation
one.
Is called arcs.
Arcs.
So very few organisms are capable of movements that have a mechanical in and out or up and down precision. Most living creatures will move in a circular path, otherwise known as an arc. So let's say that we were given these key poses and were told to fill in the poses in between. Simply taking the midway point between the poses will not work, because this looks way too mechanical. The ball needs to follow an arc. Of course, we also need to consider the slow in and out caused by gravity. When doing this in 3D and motion graphics, we can achieve this effect by keeping the movement in the x-axis constant, but giving the movement in the y-axis a slow in and slow out. This will give the ball its arc. Now let's look...
Okay, wait, I want to show you that part again.
Slow in and out caused by gravity. When doing this in 3D and motion graphics, we can achieve this effect by keeping the movement in the x-axis constant, but...
Okay, what is the x-axis here? It's the time. So in other words, you constantly have the time, but you increase the value in between the spaces. So what will happen?
Giving the movement in the y-axis.
The movement is going to be the y. So as you increase the movement, then you'll have an arc.
A slow in and slow.
Okay, so you would have a slow in and a slow out. Okay, so that's the idea that the graph is showing here. You increase the value and the time is the same.
Slow out. This will give the ball its arc. Now let's look at this head turn. Right now it looks pretty dull and straight, but if we add an arc to it, it gives it a little bit more character. Forgetting about arcs can lead to some obvious mistakes. For example, we may in between this movement by calculating the midpoint like this and cause the shape of the object to shrink. If we were to draw a simple arc as reference, then this movement would be a lot easier and more realistic. Arcs can be added to almost any figure movement. This guy is landing on the ground. Let's have his body settle in an arc.
Okay, the body is in arc. The next part, the arm is going to be in arc. So it's giving you a better image.
This guy is reacting with shock. Let's have his body and arms follow an arc. This guy is taking a step. have his body move down and up.
Okay, the movement of the body from the left to right, or the moving backwards. It's actually moving up the body and then down. That's an arc.
Up in an arc before he even takes his next step. This guy is kicking. Have his leg and body follow through in an arc. When movements are very fast, you can add arcs in the form of a smear.
Okay, the form of a spear, the movement of this particular stick that the stick man is using, is actually following an arc as well.
Take the beginning and end pose and draw an arc in between and fill it in the same color as the object, maybe slightly transparent or fragmented towards the end of the action. Okay, the next principle is called
Okay, the last one for this week, and hopefully we can get it done before the end of the term. I mean, before the end of the finals, or the end of the prelims. We'll try to implement it right away, and if we can get it done in 3 weeks, then that's good. If we are even faster than that, we can get the 9 to 12 principles of animation, and then we can implement other tools in 2D animation. Okay, so we'll look at secondary action.
secondary action, associated with overlapping action, although according to Frank and Ollie, it means something very different. Secondary action describes gestures that support the main action to add more dimension to the character animation. For example, a character may be walking angrily. The primary action is the legs, and the secondary action is everything else. The arms swinging, the head bobbing, and the facial movements. Let's say a character is about to knock on a door. The secondary action of the other hand will communicate what kind of door knocking this is. If it's a fist, it makes him look angry. If it's dainty, it gives him a graceful, happy vibe. If it's tucked close while the head looks back and forth before knocking, it communicates that he doesn't want to be discovered.
Okay, notice here, the secondary action is a secondary arm. The one knocking is the main arm, the main hand, and the secondary action is the showing of the action of the other arm, showing whether he is afraid or he's very feminine, or he's very gentle, or he's really mad, or he's really upset. You use that as an application for animation.
This guy is picking up a box. We can give him more personality by having him rub his hands together and twiddle them in the air while getting ready to pick it up. It's important not to let the secondary action dominate the primary action. If a figure has a sad expression that should be seen, and we are adding a secondary action of wiping away a tear, the hand shouldn't cover the face. On the other hand, don't let it go unnoticed. People might not even notice that there's a tear there unless you give it its own time. This is why the principle of staging is very important in secondary action. So let's take this simple bite animation and give it some secondary action. First, let's make him lick his lips to show that he's hungry. Next, let's make him close his eyes and have his eyebrows go up, showing that he likes it. Last,
okay, it says first is the tongue, the lips, the licking the lips, the tongue licking the lips. The next one is the eyes closing. Okay, and the third part here is showing you the secondary action of the character wanting to have the eating the burger.
let's make him shake his head because he cannot believe how good it
Okay, so the shaking of the head makes it the idea of I cannot believe how good this is. Okay,
tastes. The primary action is the
let's do
bite,
it again.
but all the secondary action. If a figure has a sad expression that should be seen, and we are adding a secondary action of wiping away a tear, the hand shouldn't cover the face. On the other hand, don't let it go unnoticed. People might not even notice that there's a tear there unless you give it its own time. This is why the principle of staging is very important in secondary action. So let's take this simple bite animation and give it some secondary action. First, let's make him lick his lips to show that he's hungry. Next, let's make him close his eyes and have his eyebrows go up, showing that he likes it. Last, let's make him shake his head because he cannot believe how good it tastes. The primary action is the bite, but all the secondary actions add more dimension to the bite. So the next principle is called timing. This principle states that the personality and nature of an animation is greatly affected by the number of frames inserted between each main action.
Okay, let's take a look at that definition again. Okay, it says the personality and nature of an animation is greatly affected by the number of frames inserted between each main action. Okay, so you're gonna see the concept of what we were talking about here, that the secondary action will reflect that part. Okay, so let's see.
Up, showing that he likes it. Last, let's make him shake his head because he cannot believe how good it tastes. The primary action is the bite, but all the secondary actions add more dimension to the bite. So the next principle.
Okay, so that should be the last part today, the secondary action. Okay, let's go back to, let me end this session. Let me end this capture. And so I'm going to go back to discussing our requirements for the lab and also requirements for the next 2 weeks, which is creating an animation related to the 4 things that I mentioned today. So you learned already the first few principles, the squash and stretch, the anticipation, the post head through, and staging. Uh, um, and now we're going to look at the next 4, which is follow through and overlapping action, the slow in and slow out, and then the arcs. Okay, so having said that, I hope that you'd be able to implement this. I'm going to be available through consultation. I'm recording this, and I'm going to try to play this at 2:30, or you can play it in your own time. But I will have this constantly playing on the MS Teams. Okay, see you later, guys. Bye-bye.